Honestly, I don't feel great about this, and I'm probably going to get ridiculed. But you know what? New year, same me. Let's do it anyway. Yo, what's up, guys? Ben Babbit here, and welcome back to the first episode of Road Back to High Stakes in 2025. So we're not going to be taking any time looking at the graph today, but that is because I have a huge backlog of hands. I'm hopefully going to get some guests on the channel to review some of these hands with me as a little bit of a mix up of content. So if you do have any ideas of who you want to see brutally review my hands, definitely do let me know in the comments below. And just a reminder, I'm going to do a play and explain at 10,000 subs. So if you haven't already, please do go ahead and drop me a sub. But let's get on into today's hands. And first up, we honestly get beyond destroyed by a recreational. Secondly, we have another recreational, let's just say doing all the work for us. Third up, we are playing one of the best, if not the best reg in the 1k GG pool, and we are obviously rifling it off with King High. And last up, we make another full house versus another recreational. Apparently, I'm only showing winning hands today. Clearly, I'm feeling a little bit vulnerable that I have so far lost this month, although gotta say, I am about break even after rate back, but it is nice to be posting a few winners for you guys, so I really hope you enjoy these. So first up today, we've got King Queen offsuit versus a huge recreational player. This player just donked like absolutely nothing all over the place, and they were limp calling like all sorts of nonsense as well. But let's just say I didn't realize how much of a recreational they were until this hand happened, and let's just run it and we will take it from there. So I do ISO to 5x, which is a pretty normal ISO, I think, given that we're a bit deep as well, and the recreational in a shocking turn of events snap calls. We see Jack, Jack, 6 rainbow. They don't donk the flop, which is quite interesting to me. They definitely were donking a lot, as I said. But either way, I think betting is probably just the most standard play here. They weren't really very kind of like check raisey either. And I'm expecting them to call the flop with like legit like 9-5 suited, for example. So we see Jack on the turn giving everyone 3 of a kind, and now it gets a bit interesting. They get out the full pot donk. So I think folding is definitely an option here. I don't really like calling. I think I'd call a hand if I had like ace-2 suited or something like that. King Queen is just like a little bit too weak, given that they can still be donking combos like ace high amongst all of those other terrible hands as well though. So also the other thing is when I call the turn and then they like donk like, I don't know, any river, calling King High and then bluff losing to ace high is just a complete disaster. For that reason, I just decide to raise the turn. This may well be ill-advised, but given my reads prior to this of them donking like a whole load of nothing hands, I think raising is going to do okay. So I do decide to do it. So we do raise, and as you see, we got absolutely turbo snap called. So what do we want to do now? Do we want to just give up, check back, and then assume that they have like more combos like boats that just now don't fold? My kind of understanding here is that because this player is so erratic, and because I do think they are going to be bet calling the turn with combos like ace high and that kind of thing, that I do think they're going to be folding at least some of the time. So I do decide to go for it. Honestly, I don't feel great about this, and I'm probably going to get ridiculed. But you know what? New year, same me. Let's do it anyway. So I shove it in for about 93 big blinds and hoping to fade the snap. But on this occasion, we get absolutely turbo binned by ace-3 offsuit. And yeah, there's nothing more to say about this one. It's very sad. So next up, we have got ace-king suited under the gun. We get a cold call out the small blind from a reg, and then we get a squeeze from a brand new player in the big blind. Now, my reads on this player, well, I had no reads. They seemed like a relatively normal player. I think this was probably like 3 hands in or something like that. What I do know is that ace-king suited is a good enough hand to 4-bet versus anyone, even if we don't know them. So I go ahead and do that. We make it 500 to go, they call, and we see a pretty mediocre 7-6-4 with a flush draw. Got a backdoor flush draw, and I think this board is like nowhere near as bad as it may look to some of you. So I think we have a bet at least most of the time, especially with this combo. So I go ahead and do so, especially versus a new player. I'm assuming that they are going to probably proceed with like relative caution in these kind of situations with a 4-bet from under the gun. So I do fire out for 1/4 pot and flop. They do call after not much deliberation, and we turn a pretty pleasing ace of spades on the turn. Now, versus a very new player and them 3-betting, calling a 4-bet, and then check calling the flop, I imagine that their range is very, very, very tens and jacks and queens heavy. So versus an unknown player and basically having like an immortal hand, I probably would ordinarily bet like 20% pot here, but versus a player that I really don't know, I'm just going to go with a super, super small sizing and just like and not allow them to fold like a kind of a combo like pocket tens or pocket jacks. So I go 10% pot on the turn and they do very, very quickly call, and we see a pretty interesting 5 of hearts. Now, big blind goes into the tank, which usually means one thing, and they do get out the donk shove. So pretty much all this comes down to is this is an unknown player. Yes, it's kind of hard to see bluffs, not to mention that we probably just do have like a value catch versus a hand like ace king if it's played this way. So I'm never ever considering folding, and I do decide to snap call. And on this occasion, the read is now that the big blind is a monumental recreational, which I obviously couldn't have known. They have called a 4-bet pre with king queen off. They've check called this 7-6-4 and then check called an ace turn into river donk. And let's just say this has gone about as well as it could have done for us, and we definitely take this one down. Next up, we have got pocket aces in the big blind. We get open from a reg on the button. Don't really have that many reads on this reg, and then we obviously 3-bet big blind with pocket aces and get a pretty quick call. Flop comes a pretty reasonable ace-9-3 with a flush draw. Going to be using probably small bets on this board. Pocket aces can probably go into the check, and that is exactly what I do on this occasion. Now, when we do find some frequency check on the flop, I think this is now a turn that we're going to be hyper polarizing. So maybe we're going to be using like a full pot sizing. Maybe we could even use an overbet sizing. And I think when we just like super block the board, we probably now just want to pure check our hand. We could definitely have bet our hand like some of the time on the flop. But yeah, once we arrive at the turn, I think it just makes a pretty normal turn check. Villain now checks again, and we do now river quads. So I think now we're pretty much forced into betting our hand. The sizing scheme definitely is probably going to be very small, like a block sizing and then like a medium sizing. I think I actually made a mistake here and I went with a small sizing. The reason I think I've made a mistake here is because imposition has now not taken a betting opportunity twice. They are so unlikely to have much of a river raising like range at all. So when I go small on the river, we basically just get called by so many combos that would also be calling 2/3 pot. I think 2/3 pot is the sizing here, allowing imposition just to have to be turbo calling all of their king X, which they definitely would be kind of like checking back twice. And then also like a bunch of pocket pairs, also giving us an opportunity to bluff, I don't know, hand like 8-7 of hearts or something like that if we had arrived like this. So yeah, I think I made a bit of a mistake here and went 1/3 pot when I should have gone bigger. But you know what? It doesn't matter when you make the wrong sizing on the river when they decide to, out of nowhere, ship it in for the full 90 big blinds. I nearly fell out my chair when I saw this, I won't lie. And obviously they do have pocket nines for a full house. And let's just say, I think that their turn check is wild to me. To decide to check twice here with this exact combo and then shove over the river. I mean, the river shove's obviously fine given the play, but I think that this was a massive underplay. But this was probably the most unconventional and surprising way I could have won the stack. So next up, we have got king queen offsuit on the button, and we open it up and get 3-bet by the big blind. Now, the big blind, in my opinion, is probably the best, if not one of the best 1K and L regs and 2K and L regs at the moment. Plays super high volume, does loads of battling, and yeah, I just think is a very tough and strong player. Sure, many people would agree with this. For those of you who are watching this video who do play 1K and 2K, this is the player that loves an emote, or should I say 1,000 emotes every single hand, so I'm sure you guys know who I am talking about. So we do have king queen offsuit. I know this player is playing pretty theory pre-flop. I'm going to be doing some 4-betting and I'm going to be doing some calling. And on this occasion, we do hit the call button. We flop 2 overs to jack 6-4 rainbow, and said player decides to start out with a check. Now, I think on this board, we're going to be using some small bets and some checks. And I think with our combo, we actually do want to be betting like the vast majority of the time. I decided I am going to check a bit more with the king of diamonds in my hand, simply because that kind of is the folding range from out of position. Combo like king 10 of diamonds, for example. Admittedly, it probably does bet the flop a lot, but you get the idea. So I do decide to check this one. We turn a fake backdoor flush draw and a pretty non-fake gut shot on the 9 of hearts, and now we get checked to again. definitely, now that I've only checked this hand like some of the time, or only checked some of my king queen on the flop, I'm definitely going to use this one as a pure barrel on the turn, and I'm going to be building around like decent jack X, even like a combo like jack 10. So I do decide to fire out for 2/3 pot with my combo always. Big blind tanks for a little while before flicking it in. So when big blind calls, I think that their range is so well defined here. It's going to be a bunch of 1 pairs mainly, some 4x, some 6x, some pocket 8s, some pocket 10s, and then there's going to be loads of 9x. More like king 9, queen 9 that didn't bet the flop, ace 9 that didn't bet the flop, 9-8 that didn't bet the flop, but it's pretty much going to be those combos nearly always. We do see a very good card for our range in the Jack of Hearts. It improves us to trips a lot of the time, and obviously it gives us a flush a bunch of the time as well. Now, you might say that we don't want to bluff this hand, and the reason we don't want to bluff this hand is because we want to bluff hands like 8-7 or queen 10 or those kind of hands. The reason I want to bluff this hand over those hands is because unblocking pocket 10s is a pretty big portion of the range here. Yes, we do block a king 9, but we unblock all of those kind of like 10-9s, 8-9s, and those kind of combos as well. So I do decide, particularly with the fact that on the jack we make a lot of value hands now, we improve a lot of our hands like to trips or to flushes, I decide to shove my hand in always. We do fade the snap, which is very good news, but after a pretty long tank, we do get called by ace 9 offsuit, the super low frequency 3-bet pre. This hand makes so much sense. I think the reason they've called this hand, amongst like many reasons, is because when they take this line after not betting flop and then check calling turn, so they actually arrive here very narrow, and then the bluff catchers become fairly unintuitive. And obviously they would rather have a heart here, but this seems like a pretty good bluff catcher and just another example of a very good call from a very good player. Next up, we have got pocket 3s in the big blind, and this is the almost exact same hand that I had about 4 months ago, but we will kind of come to that at the end of this hand, and I would like to hear people's thoughts. So we do defend pocket 3s, we see king, queen with a flush draw, we check, they start out with a bet, and we defend the flop. We turn a pretty pleasing full house on the 3 of clubs, bringing second flush draw, and villain now fires out again for $83 into 91. I think raising is probably going to be the most standard option here, but on this occasion I do decide to call. We river a not so bad, all things considered, 4 of a kind on the 3 of hearts, and now villain gets out the pretty healthy bet on the river. Obviously we're going to be shoving it in, and there's nothing more to be said about that. Now this is where I kind of want to pause it and just like remind you of a hand I played not too long ago. I think it was about 4 months ago, and I had 8x on 9-8, maybe 4, 8, 4. And I bet the river and I got shoved on. Obviously this is a bit of a different situation because I donked the river for 2/3 pot in that spot. But my question is, if you are playing in this situation versus me in the big blind, and you face a shove on the river when you've tripled off a king, what do you want to do versus me? What do you want to do versus population? Do you call expecting people to shove a king, or do you fold expecting no one in their right minds to be shoving a hand that you chop with? Let me know in the comments, I would be super interested to hear. Either way, this reg decides to go into the tank and ends up calling it off with ace-king offsuit for a full house. Let me know what you think about this call in reality. Obviously, in theory, it's probably going to be, I haven't actually checked, it's maybe going to be pure, it's maybe going to be mixed, but I'd be super curious to hear people's thoughts. And next up, we have got queen 10 offsuit at 2KNL. Now, I just want to say my results at 2KNL this year so far have been so incredibly bad. And I've seen a lot of people's results so far at 2K has been really bad as well. It doesn't really make much sense to me. The recreationals are the same and they are huge, but somehow results have been very bad. Very small sample, obviously, but just, yeah, I wanted to throw that out there. So we do have queen 10 offsuit, and we get called on the button by a beluga. 77 VPIP in the mix, doesn't like to fold, just, yeah, giving it away pretty much. We flop 2 pair on 10-4-4 with queen 10. We do face about 3/4 pot on the flop. I think raising would be okay, but this player was very aggressive. As you can see, very splashy, very in the mix, running 77-44, 9 over 57 hands. So needless to say, let's just give them a bit of rope and hope for the best. So I do, after reading the note, decide to go into call mode, and we do turn a very pleasing full house on the 4 of spades. Now we face a very quick half pot. When I see half pot, I'm just assuming that this is going to be a 10 like some of the time, but it's going to be some other pocket pairs. But also, I never really expect to be losing now given the speed of the flop and turn bet. So for that reason, I decide to raise the turn. Maybe this is just like ill-advised because we just want them to blast off a hand like King 5 offsuit or something like that. But on the occasion they do decide to get sticky with, I don't know, like an ace queen or a pocket eights or something like that, I just really want to kind of build the pot. We do get absolutely turbo snap called. I think this is telling me that it's most likely going to be a 10 and that we are going to chop most of the time. But you know what? On the occasion of that free roll happening, I'm deciding to shove it in and we get absolutely snap called by pocket sixes. This has pretty much gone as well as it could have done. And obviously my whining about losing all the money at 2K was maybe a little bit ill-founded. Next up is a bonus hand, as I forgot about this one, and it is truly, truly next level and encompasses my overall experience of ante over on GG Poker. So we do get a limp from a huge recreational. Now this player had already got it in with, I think, King 10 offsuit pre-flop versus pocket aces and had bad beat 2 hands before. So needless to say, picking up pocket kings versus that kind of player, I'm pretty excited about it. So it folds all the way around to us and I decide to make it 10x in the small blind. I think definitely I want to make this smaller in general, but with only 1 reg behind, I can kind of get away with doing what I want as there's no one going to really be able to exploit the fact that I'm going to do that. So we see 8-5-3 with a flush draw and we have kings with a spade. Very, very good flop. I decide to check because for this reason, we have a very, very bet happy recreational who is very willing to get it in a lot of spots. I make a pretty healthy raise to around 700, I think it is, with the objective to shove most turns. Now, villain quickly calls the flop. I want you to remember that villain called the flop here, and we do see a 9 of clubs on the turn. Seems like a pretty safe one to me. Obviously, we're going to lose to some hands, and that's okay. Some suited 9-5s and 9-8s and pocket 8s and 7-6s and that kind of thing. But all things considered, this is about as clean as it gets for me, and I'm going to jam it in for under pot. Recreational goes into the tank and ends up calling with ace-7 offsuit. Now, if you've watched my videos for a little while, you know that I was sweating this one very, very, very hard, particularly at the ante table. We do get an option to run it twice, which I desperately beg the recreational to do. They say no on this occasion. I don't take my opportunity to cash out, which we again know is a huge mistake on my part. And we do run it 1 time. We do get the hello from another reg. I think they know what's about to happen. And on this occasion, we do see the ace of diamonds on the river for a very, very sad loss of a stack. So lastly, we have got ace 10 of diamonds and we get another huge recreational. This one is running 60 VPIP. The reads on this player are that they don't fold. They love to get in the mix. They love to call versus raises. They are not afraid versus bets. So yeah, just very, very, very stationary. We 3-bet ace 10 of diamonds, which is pretty standard to me. And you know, when you 3-bet ace 10 of diamonds, the one flop you definitely want to see is king, queen, jack, or diamonds for the flopped royal flush. I start out with a 25% bet on the flop, not really expecting that many folds, any pocket pair with a diamond, any pair on the flop. Yeah, you name it. The only hands that are going to fold are going to be like 4 or 5 of hearts or something like that. All things considered, it's still an okay spot. The reason it's an okay spot is because obviously pocket pairs with a diamond now hit a flush and do continue, but versus this exact player, they're still just not going to fold ace jack of hearts on the turn. I don't want to go too big, not only because I can never lose the hand, but I also definitely don't want them to fold that hand like, I don't know, like a jack 10 of hearts or something like that. Fortunately, we do get absolutely snap called and we see a king of hearts on the river. So obviously now they could make some full houses. Honestly, it's very unlikely given the speed that they called the flop and turn. I think they would have just fast played the flop with 2-pair or a set. So I'm kind of discounting that, although there are going to be some like king 10s and stuff like that. I was going to shove, but I ended up going with 2/3 pot. And the reason for that is that because this player is so wide and because we lock down the board so much, they may end up folding a hand like pocket 5s with a diamond versus the river shove, or I'd know a hand like jack 10 of hearts or ace jack of hearts or something along those lines. The other thing is when I go this size, and they're definitely going to shove a boat, so it's not like I lose out on value versus those hands anyway. So I just really, really want to make sure that we get called in a spot that we block the board so heavily, and obviously their range has to be relatively weak. It will suck if they have a hand like king 9 with a 9 of diamonds, but like it's so unlikely and such a marginal part of the range that I'm kind of okay to try and get max value from the other portions of the range, which are going to arrive much more frequently. So we do bet 2/3 pot, and on this occasion we do get snap called by queen 10 offsuit. Maybe we lost out money, maybe they would have just called the all-in. My thinking is that they probably would have folded versus an all-in, but you guys can let me know about that one in the comments. But I think all things considered, we've made some pretty strong hands in this video, which I am very happy about. So that is going to do it for the first episode of 2025. Really hope you guys enjoyed it. If you haven't already, go ahead and drop me a sub, and definitely do let me know who you would like to see on the channel in the not so distant future to review some more hands. But until next time, take care, and I will see you at the tables.